do believe we are now live. All right, cool, excellent. So, welcome. Looks like people are just starting to filter in right now. I'm sure it's going to be a couple minutes before anyone actually shows up to this conversation. But until then, we are streaming right now. Myself and my guest for the evening, Madeline. Do you care to introduce yourself?
Hi, it's actually Madeline.
Madeline, I'm sorry.
No,
sorry. I realized I
everyone does it. It's totally good. Hi, I'm Madeline. Pronoun she her. I am also a YouTuber. I have my own channel, and I'm excited to be here. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. And do you go by Anthony? Is that the
yeah. Anthony is good. Ant is good too.
Ant. I like Ant because that's how I see you on Twitter. It says Ant Dude, or I just think of like, oh, it's Ant. Okay. Cool. No, I'm excited. I'm very excited about the conversation we're gonna have today.
Oh, 100% agree, because this is one of those anime, really the manga more for me than the anime, that I have so many strong feelings about from growing up with it. Like, this is, I'm getting ahead of myself. Again, people are just going to start filtering in, so I don't want to get to the big topic too quickly, when you suggested this topic, I was like, yeah, we have to talk about this, because this is...
Well, I watched your video where you talked about Love Hina.
Mm-hmm.
Which was the what was it? It was the what was the topic?
Was it the anime fan service one, or was it the Japanese culture war one? Because I mentioned Love Hina, I mentioned more Ken Akamatsu in the Japanese culture war video, but the fan service one,
I think it was the fan service one. Yeah, I think it was the fan service one, and I just was watching you talk about Love Hina, and it just brought back all of these memories for me, because I've also read the entire Love Hina manga, so I felt like talking about it, because it's very special to me, because it's something I read when I was a kid, and it's gonna be a weird conversation, but I'm very excited to have it.
Oh no! It always starts. Trust me, Madeline. It always starts wonky, and then you get into the groove of it, and you just go.
Oh no! I mean, once it gets all started, it's gonna get weird. So this is like just prepping, because everything I'm gonna say is gonna sound very. I'm excited to talk about this. That's all I'm gonna say.
Understandable. Listen,
that's all I'm gonna say.
Even if I don't particularly love this series, just talking about something like this nostalgic for me, I think is really exciting. And I think what helps with it is that this particular series was so omnipresent when at least when I was a kid. I feel like we're roughly the same age. When we were growing up, it was like this was everywhere. I know at my town had a library, and they used to stock the manga section with all different manga that were considered the most popular at the time. And of course, there was all these different harem series that probably shouldn't have been in the teen section when I was like 13, 14, but it was there. They had some really... they had, like, I remember in the library, they had Deers, they had Love Hina, they had Aoi House, if you... Remember Aoi House?
Aoi?
Aoi, yeah. That's an American comic. I can get into Aoi House later. That's an American comic.
Like... Yeah. Are you spelling that like yaoi, or
yeah. So
is that
the concept? Is it's a yaoi fan club on a college campus, but the Y fell off the building, so they just call it the Aoi House.
Oh no!
This is very serious. This is very serious literature. There's a whole.
This is a manga.
This was an American comic stylized as a manga. So it was
incredible. I love this.
And in the last arc of the story, they go to Silent Hill. They literally just go to Silent Hill. They go to an anime convention, take a wrong turn, end up in Silent Hill.
This was in stores? This sounds like a webcomic.
No, it was. Hang on, actually, let me see if I can grab it. I'm taking my earphones off for a second here.
Because this
It
sounds like Mega
is
Tokyo stuff.
right here. Get away. My spouse's thing right there. Here we go. So. This is it right here. Uh, 1 second. Earphones back in. I can now hear you again. Yeah. So
I can't. Well, I can't see
that's
your
right. So because
what you're looking at.
that's valid. Let me. Okay. So on stream you can see this. These are omnibuses for Owie House. This is This is my shame. I keep it on the wall next to DramaCon because I feel like I deserve to.
I
I cannot
remember
forget.
DramaCon.
There you go.
I remember DramaCon. Yeah.
I feel like it's wrong to forget the cringy past of what you read in high
Exactly.
school.
No, we need to
There
understand.
you
Like
go.
we were born terrible, every
Yeah.
single person, and we just need to accept that. It's fine. You know, you don't have to pretend like, oh, I never liked the thing that sucks. No, you liked it. Don't lie. All right.
100%.
You were a loser like everyone else. Just like don't.
The level of lame,
You know? Yeah, yeah.
level of lame, crappy manga I grew up with. And DramaCon's not bad. I'm not saying there's a couple DramaCon defenders here. I'm not saying DramaCon is bad. We can put away the pitchforks for right now. I am saying though that Owie House is not great. I think
Is it a yaoi comic? Was it a yaoi web comic?
it's not a yaoi comic
It's
at
not
all.
a yaoi.
It's
Okay.
actually just about yaoi fangirls. It's actually just a harem anime. It's basically Love Hina, honestly. It's like two college guys who want to score babes. Their words. Go to an anime clubhouse, not realize on their college campus, not realizing that everyone there is a yaoi fan, and they're
This is the most 2000s shit I've ever. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear or not on the show. This is the most 2000s
it's
thing.
5 minutes through. You're fine. Just don't drop like a really bad swear. You should be fine.
I'll wait until after hours for that one. Okay. But that is. I used to read. I used to read a lot of webcomics. When I was younger, I do eventually want to make my own kind of video about them because I was really connected in what was like, I guess like, charitably I want to call it like proto trans stuff, but in reality they were all like fetish comics.
That's a whole other world right there. You want.
Yeah, and I read a lot of that stuff. Like El Guna Shy was like the big one.
Which
I read a lot of. It's like it's a fetish comic basically, but it's a very wholesome fetish comic. Like the concept is people are transforming into girls and like animals and all these things. And
would you say it's like furry stuff, or is it more like
there's furry. It's a lot of furry stuff. A lot of gender transformation stuff. At the time, it was like a big thing at the time.
That sounds familiar. That's why I'm asking.
This is like 2000s. Again, this is like when I'm in high school. And like, yeah, you know, as a young kid who didn't like even know what being trans was until like college, like this was really the only way I knew to kind of get some feeling from like these thoughts I had. They were always just pushed to like the worst places because there wasn't like any kind of education on this stuff. So I would just find these like weird fetish comics and go, oh, that's kind of like how I think in my head. I guess I'm a pervert who should read this pervert comic. Okay, that's fine.
That's the worst to feel though about yourself.
It's kind of like, I mean, I'm so happy for this generation that there's actually a dialogue and people know about being trans. Again, like I spent like most of my teens like just not knowing that you could be a trans person. So yeah.
Well, that's the thing right there, isn't it? Like a lot of like transgressive media was the only source of information for especially LGBTQ audiences, you know? Because mainstream material, like, and for anyone born after the year 2000, a staggering number of people born under the year 2000, you know, you had
people who do not remember where they were on 9/11 because they were not born on 9/11.
Oh, don't get started on that. I was in New Jersey in 9/11. I was in North Jersey in 9/11. We saw the that's a whole discussion. I actually got into that in a previous talk.
I remember I was in middle school when it happened. I remember exactly where I was. It was insane. Yeah.
Yeah, we could see it from where we were living. It was not great.
Oh,
but anyway, I won't get depressing on you. That's a whole other discussion. We're not talking about 9/11. I'm not going to bring that up. That's digging up demons. I don't want
no, we're going to instead talk about the 9/11 of manga, which is Love Hina.
That's up there certainly. I would say, oh god, that's terrible. Not unwarranted.
It's not. What would be the 9/11 of manga?
School days, maybe.
Which one?
School days, maybe.
I want to see School Days just because I'm so fascinated by that twist that happens.
You've never seen School Days? I want to
know if there's like I know what happens. I know the whole concept. I know everything about School Days, but like I haven't seen it, and I want to know like because that twist is so fascinating to me. I want to see if possibly it is kind of like this weird like Verhoeven-esque satire on the genre and just like nobody gets it, or if it really is just like this horrible thing.
I feel like it's somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's
somewhere in the middle.
I don't think they're like completely unaware of what they're playing with, because they do play up how I forget the main character in School Days' name. He's such a awful little worm. He feels like he is the antithesis. No, he's like kind of like the traditional harem protagonist taken to its worst extremes. Like he is.
That's kind of interesting.
Oh
to
yeah,
me,
he's a selfish, self-centered, manipulative little kid, and he does things to women and to his classmates that is just horrible. And so you don't feel bad when he gets killed. You really don't.
Because again, I wonder if there is like some kind of like subtle. Again, I have no idea. This might be the worst thing ever. I've never seen it. I just on an intellectual level, I am fascinated by it.
Valid. I would say honestly though that School Days is there's no subtlety in that. It is pure. It is as subtle as a wet fish slapping you in the face.
That's kind of why, like, I point out Verhoeven, because he really isn't subtle either. It's just the way that he isn't subtle is very confusing to people that aren't really like used to like that kind of explicit detail in their satire. Like if you watch something like Starship Troopers and you don't understand it's like making fun of fascist propaganda, that's because the things that it's very explicit about are just things that our own culture would be explicit about unironically. But so I do wonder if maybe there is like there is something going on, which is that's kind of like how I felt watching Paranoia Agent, which I think is a brilliant satire.
Okay, but before you finish that thought, I just saw a comment I have to respond to.
Okay, I don't know what you're. I'm not seeing anything on the screen, so I don't know what anyone's saying.
Fair enough. So I just saw a comment reading, my 9/11 anime is bludgeoning Angel Dokuro-chan. It's when I learned anime could be absolute trash, and thank you. Yes, someone else remembers bludgeoning Angel Dokuro-chan.
I love that. That's amazing.
Oh, I loved it too, but it was so terrible. Like it's.
Oh no, I didn't see it. I just love that comment. That comment sounds incredible.
Oh no, I love this series. This was like absolutely the worst. This is such garbage. This series, and I would show a clip on this stream, but I'm afraid that YouTube will ban my channel if I show any clip from that show. Like, the concept is this angel just murders this protagonist consistently, brings him back to life again and again, an endless cycle of just cruelty. But like she does it out of affection. Like her love language is decapitation with a club, with a spiked bat club. That's her love language.
That is. Oh, I was trying to think of the actual 9/11 anime, because I was like, I know there is one. I just can't remember what it's called. But yeah, I think most of us would agree that Boku no Pico is absolutely the 9/11 of anime. And was for a while just like
a meme.
Oh God, it was a meme. Probably not great for trans rights either. Just a lot of things going on with that one.
It's not great for any rights. I don't think. I don't think anyone watched.
I think it said everyone back, just in general, like 20 years.
I don't think anyone watched Boku no Pico and thought, "Yeah, this is representative of like real life. this is real life right here." No.
I hope people didn't watch Boku no Pico and were like, "Oh, is that what like trans people are like?" Like, no, it's the.
I feel like anyone who watched Boku no Pico deserves like reparations for that trauma.
I think if you watch more than like 10 minutes, 5 seconds of the show, and you're still watching it, and you're like, I want to see how this ends. I think you built your own bed. You slept in your own bed.
Yeah, at a certain point, it's their fault. At a certain point, it's their own fault. Like you can't say you weren't warned. Especially in the early 2000s.
A meme everyone knows. I saw like one clip of it online, and I was like, no, I don't need any of this in my life. What is this?
And the thing is, I don't think Boku no Pico is particularly like the worst anime I've seen. It's just
no.
So,
I think
like it's almost just an easy target because of how bizarre and awful it is. I think Legend of the Overfiend is way more disturbing. Honestly.
Oh yeah, I think honestly,
but also tries to be.
I was kind of like talking. I was kind of mentioning this a little bit, but I think that a lot of the hate to Boku no Pico, like obviously the content is awful and bad, but there is also that transphobic element to it because like Shada is awful by itself. But, like, the fact that it's Shada and they're cross-dressing, quote-unquote, like, that's what makes it really evil. You know, I do think that there is an argument for, like, why that one specifically was, like, put up to, like, the highest levels of, like, terrible, worst, most horrific thing. It is, I think there's a bit of transphobia there. A little bit.
I think a lot has to do with that one video that came out. I think that really is the big reason. Like, because there's so many... And I actually... A few years ago, I wrote an article, back when I was still writing a lot for CBR, I wrote an article about the best and worst LGBTQ anime. I don't know how I convinced them to let me write that. Because there were some, I don't know how much I can say about that. I will say this, the editors I worked with were very lovely. Corporate was not. But there were a bunch of like weird 90s OVAs that were like straight to video, never got a Western release. For yaoi that were just particularly bad, like really just horrendous. And they were horrendous not just because they were like forgettable series in that they just weren't good, but they were also bad because some of the stuff they showed. And I couldn't, honestly, for the life of me, I can't tell you what they were because it was a while back when I wrote this. I remember like there was some. I think at one point a lot of barbed wire was involved in the way that should not be involved outside of like a Hellraiser story. But
oh my god!
But like it's one of those things where like, you know, you read about this, you learn about this, and you realize, oh, why did no one ever talk about this? And it's because it never got that push, especially in the early 2000s internet, that so many other series did, because it's all about visibility. Ultimately speaking, with a lot of these anime, Love Hina, for example, going back to the topic at hand, you know, that manga became popular because every school library had it, because it was pushed at Barnes & Noble and Borders alike, because the anime was very visible, and I think because of a popular dating sim on Newgrounds.com, which is how I also found out about Love Hina, but that's a whole other discussion I'm sure I'll bring up later. At least once.
Newgrounds is honestly is fascinating just by itself.
100%.
I think, like, just sorry, I actually just opened the YouTube so I can kind of look at the chat a little bit of your video.
Understandable.
If not the video itself.
So you can see my terrible hair essentially.
So yeah, if you want to ask me a question, I can now kind of see chat sometimes. But like, for me, I love Newgrounds. It's a whole other, that can be a whole other conversation. I was a big Newgrounds lurker back in the day. You know, but like, I guess, kind of finally starting this topic of Love Hina. I remember I found out about Love Hina in school, where I went to this this after school club that was just like a hangout for kids or whatever. And I remember there were like these older kids that had a laptop and they were all kind of like gathered around to like watch this thing. And so like I went over there to like see what was going on, and they were all watching Love Hina. And I was like, what is this? Like, oh my God, Love Hina, it's so funny. It's like, it's so sexy, like it's so hot and whatever. And like all this stuff. And I remember watching it and thinking that it was funny, at least the parts that I saw. Or, the big kids were laughing, which made me feel like I was laughing also. Like, yeah, it was such like a big topic of conversation that I did end up going out to like read the first manga, because like that seemed to be like the cool thing for like at the time. Because everyone seemed to be like, oh, this is like a super adult thing, like if you want to be that you're adult, you should read Love Hina, and all these things, or watch the anime. And I started reading the manga, and okay, this is gonna be really. I'm gonna try really hard to describe this because as your viewers have probably realized by now, I am a trans woman. My pronouns are she, her. I'm bisexual, and I'm also on the A spectrum. I'm not completely sex repulsed, but I do consider myself on the A spectrum. So why in God's name would I read Love Hina, which seems to be the exact opposite of a concept for somebody like me to enjoy? And I've been thinking about it because, that initial peer pressure of like wanting to be cool got my foot in the door of like checking it out, but that didn't sustain why I read the entire series. Like no, that only, right? And the best I can think about is I have a couple of theories of why I was so obsessed with it. One thing is that I never really like the sexual stuff, like the fan service and all that stuff. That was never the reason I read it. Like, I mean, think about the best way to explain this. I think what I loved about Love Hina was that it was like, I guess to me, it felt like a shoujo that I was allowed to read as presenting as a boy at the time. Because I wasn't supposed to like things that like starred women or that were like cutesy or things like that. And I felt like with Love Hina, you had like this excuse to watch what is essentially a romance story. But it's considered like manly because there's all this fan service stuff in it. But like to me, I was much more interested in the relationship between Kitaro and Naru. Like that's why I read it, because I wanted to see what was going to happen with this relationship. Like that was the most important thing to me. I'm reading it. So it really like wasn't like a sexual thing for me. I think like I think like I forced myself to see it as a sexual thing. This is for anyone who's trans or kind of A-spectrum may relate to this, but like you get this pressure of like you have to start like wanting to look at like pornography or like needing to pleasure yourself and things like that at a certain age, or you're like weird for not doing it.
I do want to tone it down a little bit on that part of it, but everything else we're good with. just want to moderate that slightly.
But I'm also being, I'm trying not to be graphic about it.
No, understandable.
I am also being honest. Like that was the impression. Like I remember, like I would read, like Love Hina in the bathroom, like when I was taking a poop. or whatever, and I would just kind of leave it there in the bathroom on the counter or something, and other people would come in and see it, and they would just assume that I was, doing something
Oh,
adult.
I can see that. No, you see. Here's the thing. The bathroom literature. When you go,
Right.
there's a whole. Everyone has this. Everyone does it. They bring a book with them or something to read when, you know. But like, no, I get that. That's a whole thing. I do want to read one comment. I'm reading. I saw in chat. I get it. I'm ace. I love Urusei Yatsura. Seen and loved a couple of harem stuff. What usually gets me are the character story and comedy. I think that's what we're discussing right now. The characters,
Exactly.
the
Yeah,
stories, the comedy. That's what really got a lot of us.
that's what I really liked. I think I kind of like forced the more like, again, like sexual stuff in my head
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like that's what people expected of me.
Mm.
As presenting as a boy going through puberty
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But in reality, I don't know what like the point of like you're a cis man.
Mm-hmm.
Like
And my
I don't
perspective is very
know.
different in that. And I think this
Yeah,
too. I think
exactly. Yeah.
discussing this, I think it's really interesting because my perspective is very different from yours. I want you to say your piece first before I offer my perspective as well as a contradictory opinion, but not contradictory, a different perspective on it. But I think
Right.
what you're saying is really interesting because again, like these are concerns I personally would never have personally experienced because I'm obviously very cis, not straight but cis. So in
Right.
that sense, and again, my situation as a bisexual is not at all comparable to yours as a bi-ace or a trans person because your perspective is so unique to you and your experience of development and having to, I guess, and if this is the wrong phrasing, let me know because I don't want to be disrespectful and think that. Um, I would say trying to fit in almost, it sounds like. That you're trying to fit in with the perspective of what you felt other people would have wanted. Is that accurate to say, or am I
Yeah. No.
misrepresenting it?
I would say that's exactly right. Basically my whole life, really until transitioning,
Hmm.
maybe a little bit before that, was just doing what I thought other people wanted me to do. And like I think stuff like this, like being into certain adult things, was like part of that. And I want to be clear. I do, even today will look at adult things and do adult things while watching adult. Like I do all those things. I'm a spectrum for a reason. But like I feel like the response I was supposed to have to Love Hina was different, very different from the actual response or the actual emotions what that reading Love Hina gave me.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I mean I'm guessing you can kind of go more into this when you talk about your thing, Ant, but like I
Mm-hmm.
think like maybe the cis male experience is you're supposed to like imagine yourself as Kitaro,
Mm-hmm.
like like getting all the girls and doing all the like I feel like that's the power of fantasy maybe
Mm-hmm.
for guys, but like for me I never thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like even when I was presenting as a boy, I never like put myself in like Kitaro's shoes and imagine myself with like I was so much more like interested in the women and like their relationships with each other and their problems. Like it honestly like felt like I was finally like looking into like some kind of feminine perspective, in a way that again I felt like I wasn't allowed to do because it wasn't considered like normal for like a young boy to read like something really hyper feminine or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like when I imagine these characters, like even when I did kind of force myself to like, okay, I have to show that I'm a good the manly man or whatever. I have to think of an adult situation now. I never could put myself as like Kataro. What I imagined were the girls themselves. doing adult things with each other.
That makes sense. You're projecting your experience onto. So it's interesting because obviously the way the manga is written, you're supposed to basically project yourself onto Keitaro. I personally did not, and I'll get into why, despite also being a bespectacled dark-haired person. But no, like you're projected more onto Naru and the other members of the Hina house. That's interesting and not surprising. I kind of expected you to say that when we first started that you were going to project more into them because and you look at them all, they're very talented, they're very skilled in one way or another, and they're all ambitious. They the thing is, especially when you're first reading Love Hina or watching Love Hina, I feel like the potential of these characters is very intense. There's a lot of potential intrigue about with each character, how interesting they can be in some sense of the word. But I feel like sometimes with, especially with like Love Hina, especially and I'll get to this more when I start talking about my experiences with it. But like, there is a sense of real, genuine interest with how these characters are written. I would say I'm not phrasing it correctly. When I build up, I'll get into that.
I agree with you. Like to me, I loved all of these characters, and like Naru was my favorite character. Like I loved her. I thought she was really cool. And like looking back at how much hate she has, people hate her now. They're saying she was very abusive. She was very angry all the time. She beat up Kitaro like all the time. Like that was not my perceptive at the time, at least reading the manga. Like I guess to me it made in my head like it was very clear to again, like this is all of its time, and we all have our own different mindsets and things like that. But like at the time, I kind of understood that like this is like comedy, like Kitaro's getting beat up because it's like slapstick funny, and like he's fine, like he gets beat up and then he just goes on, he's like kind of okay. And I guess like I saw that Naru was like angry and she kind of kept a lot of things to herself. She's kind of like the hyper tsundere in that sense. But like I think I just really related to Naru, and like I felt a lot of like myself in her without kind of understanding what all of that meant. And I do wonder if maybe there is like a difference between people who saw the anime versus read the manga.
Definitely.
Because the anime is relatively short and the manga's like 14 volumes, and there's so much that happens in the manga that's not in the anime that I think really does like build up their relationship in a way that to me at the time felt like pretty like natural and wholesome. Like you actually do get to see them kind of go through all these phases. Like they do like become a couple, they do like kiss and make out, and then there's more story going on after that. And at the end, spoiler alert, they get married at the end of the comic. And like I don't know, maybe it's because like the comic does go more into like Naru's perspective. I didn't really ever see her as abusive, but again, this could also just be like, one of those like, oh, at the time I didn't, but now if I looked back, because I haven't looked back at this thing in a long time, I may look back and go, oh my god, what was I saying? This is awful or whatever. But like,
I mean, I will say this.
Time,
I did. This is a good time for me to bring this up. I did write an article once about how Naru in particular is abusive.
Oh my god!
I did write about this, so this is a topic I have a lot of feelings on, the abusive angle, and I'll get to that.
So you're. I mean, again, I think that's probably correct. I'm not saying that like what I'm like. Again, this was just kind of like.
Oh yeah, no, it's all perspective.
And again, I always felt like Kitaro deserved it because he was just like being skeevy and doing all this like weird stuff. He's always like falling into naked baths. and all of these things.
Yeah, but a lot of those situations is it is getting into my opinions of Love Hina today because I've extensively watched Love Hina. That's not the case, but like I've because of where I'm at in my life right now, I have revisited Love Hina a couple times, and I have some thoughts that as an adult I feel, but when I was a kid I never felt. Like it was that kind of dichotomy, right?
Right.
And I feel like it's a good place for me to bring up my perspective too, because I feel like this is a good,
Yeah.
different perspective from yours. Um, I read Love Hina because I actually. It's funny you said that you read it as an acceptable shoujo series because
Yeah.
I read Love Hina because I wanted more shoujo. Because I was already reading shoujo pretty. Like I never felt the need to force myself to read. Like one of my favorite first anime was Sailor Moon. So loved Sailor Moon, loved Fruits Basket, Oron Host Club. These were things
I loved. Like I wasn't allowed to like I obviously liked Sailor Moon, but I always had to have that kind of mental distance because everything in my life was like very very subtly, sometimes not so subtly, like pointing me towards you need to go watch Dragon Ball Z instead. Like you need to go watch this thing instead. That's what you're supposed to do. Like
understandable.
Like I remember at some point like it became like unmanly to just watch cartoons period, and I would just watch them like privately and just not tell people that I watched them. I just end up just stop talking about them. And that was always kind of, but like with Love Hina, it's like, oh, this is kind of hot, and I'm like, oh, cool, this is kind of hot, even though like again, a lot of this is so like subconscious because like at the time I was so far in the closet mentally, like it was like impossible for me to like kind of put any of these things together. So a lot of this is kind of hindsight, but really like the things I like about Love Hina are the things I like about shoujo manga and anime, which I watch so much of nowadays.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
No, 100%. I get that entirely. No, but so yeah, so for me personally, I was like really into like shoujo and all that. And Love Hina was just I thought another series like that because you look at the cover, the first cover. I'm gonna bring this up on the chat screen right now. The first volume of Love Hina. You look at this cover and well, okay. It actually, you know what? I'm not even sure. Should I? Yeah, I'll bring it up. So you get like.
Oh yeah, I still own this somewhere. I think.
Oh yeah, no. The first actually, I noticed now that the can move our faces slightly. So like the first time you look at it, it's basically bikinis, essentially.
And one of those girls is underaged.
Yeah, I'm just gonna click out of that. Yeah, I'm just gonna smudge that away a little bit. There you go. But the opening cover, the first cover, it's a beautiful cover for a manga. Very appealing when you're 13, 14 years old. A cis closeted bisexual teenager. You read that and you're like, oh, cool. Let's see what else it has. And at this time, I discovered Love Hina around the time I first discovered the anime Ayori Aoshi, which is another harem anime. The manga.
I read some of the manga.
Yeah,
of Ayori, and I do remember liking it quite a bit.
I feel like the manga was a little more raunchy. I feel like than the anime. The anime, I think, toned down a lot of the sexual imagery a bit. I'm not sure which is more effective. I couldn't say, oh, the manga's better, the anime's better. It's been a while since I read the manga. I rewatched the anime for another another article I wrote a while back. But so this is I was in my headspace. I was watching Ayori Aoshi and I was reading Love Hina. And the vibe was immediately different because they both hit different marks with the harem and of course when you're a teenage boy who would love to be with someone, you become very you get in the headspace where you want to. The idea of being surrounded by women who are all interested in you in one way or the other, it's very appealing to a teenage boy. So I got that appeal. I got that core appeal as a teenager. You get older though, and your perspective of the opposite sex matures and changes. Your perspective changes. Therefore, you have a more nuanced understanding. the perspective of when you're a teenager that was very immature when it comes to being with someone,
Yeah.
and
I
and
want to.
the desperation to be with someone too. That's the other thing too, because as you get older, you get it more of you kind of can approach it from a more rational perspective. Like, okay, there's someone out there for you. You'll find someone, and that kind of in that understanding helps you. But like when you're 13, 14, insecure, all your insecurities coming out, making you feel like you're the worst. The fantasy of being with people who pay attention to you, who care about you, that really is such a big thing. And when it's so hyperbolic and over the top and larger than life, what that does is it gives you an outlet to kind of commodify it in a sense. You're able to go, okay, this is
You're right.
a larger than life experience. This is not reality. And you can then, when reading about it, you can overlook things that are a little more cartoonish, a little more insidious, like the abusive angle, which I'll get to because that's a whole discussion right there. Naru, I do believe firmly as an adult, displays a lot of abusive tendencies, more so than I think a lot of other tsundere in anime, especially at that time. Like, you compare it to Akane from Ranma One Half. It's an easy comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Very different because Ranma's a martial artist. They're both fighters. They both can take what they can give. Whereas Keitaru's like this spindly looking nerd, and Naru has enough physical strength in her fist to send him flying to the moon. But then again, we're also watching Pokemon, where Ash would regularly catapult, Team Rocket into space, essentially. So I think with that heightened reality, you're able to forgive the disturbing elements of the series. I'm sorry, I feel like I cut you off there at one point. Were you going to say something?
No, I was gonna agree with that. I think that's like, and again, this doesn't, justify any of the actions in Love Hina, or anything like that. But I do think like the fact that like the violence was always like slapstick, like Kitaro was like always fine. Like the thing just kind of happens and he just bounces back like nothing happened. To me, it felt very Looney Tunes in that sense. Of like Kitaro's just like this character that can just kind of bounce around because it's like a wacky little comic. I never felt like he was ever in any danger, and like weirdly enough, at the end of the comic, Kitaro just says he likes it. It's like he's like a masochist or something.
Sometimes we deal with trauma by making it a kink.
But it's also like it's not like that aspect. Like I'm willing to hear an argument about like other ways that Naru is abusive that aren't like the comedy punching and the space stuff, because I do think there could be something there. But like the punching in the space stuff to me was just like, this is just kind of like funny. Like we don't see like Kitaro being like, oh no, like I am so hurt now because of that. Like no, it's always like a joke, and I think it's understood by like everyone. Like it's such a joke that when he does actually hurt himself, not because of Naru, just for another thing, they joke about it. Like, wait, now you break something? You've been like throttled through the hemisphere like 1,000 times. And it's like that aspect, I do think, to me at least, he's like he's like Daffy Duck. He bounces right back.
Yeah, and that's a valid perspective to take, I think. I think one issue too with the abuse is how normalized it is. I think that's one part I find disturbing personally when watching it.
I think that's fair. It is also like very one-sided. It's not like the women are getting punched into the stratosphere either.
100%. I mean, I don't think I'd want to see that, but I don't think that'd be as fun. That would be kind of upsetting,
but that's the
actually.
Point, like, well, I mean, that's
double
why.
Standard,
ultimately, if we want to really get into it, that's why it happened to Kitaro, because we are much more. It's much more acceptable for a man to be punched into the sky than a woman, and that is by itself extremely sexist. That leads into like this idea that men can't be abused and things like that, which are really toxic and really damaging ideas. So in that aspect, I totally agree. That if it's bringing that mentality of like it's okay to punch men, which I definitely can see somebody reading it like that,
Mm-hmm.
then I totally get it. I totally understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But like to me, the issues of Love Hina are a lot more basic. Like, you know, one of the love interests is underaged. Like that's, you know, like they try their best with it, but again, they still just do it. There's just like an underage girl that has I think it's Shinobu, I believe
Yeah,
her
that's
name. It's just,
weird.
you know, and that's
Yeah.
unfortunately is a trend that hasn't really gone away in anime, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But
that's
like,
always weirded me out. Even like even as like a teenager, I was kind of like, this is weird. Why they like? Because
I guess to me,
I
it's
don't
like
know.
I was the same age as like Shinobu when I read it, maybe a little older. So like that's another thing, chat. Before you cancel me for like,
Don't,
I was very young when I read this, so
please
like
don't
all of this
cancel
stuff.
people for perspectives that they had when they were 14 and are now reflecting on
Look,
how they
you
were
know, I
weird
was also
perspectives.
14. If we end up getting into Nejima, which I would love to, because I have a lot to say about that one as well.
Nejima's odd to me. Like that's another one I read at that same time. Nejima is that's an odd one. I always loved the
I
vampire
read the
girl from that.
whole effing thing. There's like 40 volumes of that. I read all of them.
Did you read that sequel series he wrote too? That was basically just an
No, I
action.
didn't even know. I didn't even know that existed until like years later. I didn't
Oh
know there
my
was a sequel
good,
series.
it's
But
weird.
I,
I
yeah,
I feel like that was Ken Akamatsu kind of wrestling with the reputation of Love Hina, because like he's
right.
clearly trying to make a battle shonen series, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he's really wants to make that battle shonen series, and
But like Nejima at the end was basically like a battle shonen series.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying like he was
Yeah, yeah,
trying to make it battle shonen, but like I guess maybe his editorial staff or he was kind of being railroaded into making a harem series essentially, and I feel like that is
yeah.
really telling of the problems that Love Hina had. If you're railroaded into making essentially what amounts to sorry, what amounts to uh, a romance every single time because your audience only will watch a harem or will only watch a romance, then but you want to do something else. That's the tragedy of Love Hina, I think. It really restricted his options for a
It
while.
typecasted him
Yeah, it
as a
did.
manga artist. It typecasted him. It made it so he really couldn't make anything else. Like that's what he was known for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like Michael Bay trying to make like a drama
Like you
film.
mean like
Like, you
Pearl
know, what
Harbor?
you yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody saw Pearl Harbor. It
Nobody
was a big
liked Pearl
flop. Yeah.
Harbor.
I
I wouldn't
don't
say no one
remember it.
saw it
I
because
have
everyone had those VHSs next to the Titanic on their video
I
shelf. But
definitely saw it in theaters, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. I've
no,
totally forgot the
there's
movie.
nothing much to it. But like that's the thing. Love Hina was so, and I would say this: a lot of the characters in Negima remind me heavily of the characters from Love Hina, like design
Hmm.
wise, except for again that lovely vampire girl who was just the best part of the. From what I remember, it's been years since I've read
Okay,
Negima. I don't. My memory's a
okay,
bit fuzzy.
if we're if we're gonna switch over to Negima, I need to talk about something because Negima that was my favorite manga after I finished Love Hina. I went right to Negima and loved it. I
Mm-hmm.
was the only person that read it. I had no one else at this time. My hobbies like this, I was never part of like clubs or fan groups or forums. I wasn't on Tumblr talking about these things. I was too embarrassed. I just all of this was entirely me, no one else. I didn't talk to anybody else. This is me reading by myself Negima, just internalizing everything,
Mm-hmm.
and being this. I like this. This is mine. I'm gonna pretend. I'm never gonna say I like this to anyone. And Negima has the concept that is unexcusable by today's standards, but not even excusable by its own standards,
Mm.
of a 10-year-old teacher being fawned over by a bunch of 14-year-old girls.
Yeah, that
No
was
world where
weird.
that's an acceptable concept.
That was really
Um,
weird.
I mean, again, I think I was a little bit older than 14 when I read it, so it was like I could kind of play that mindset. But again, it was also like, again, kind of going back to Love Hina, I never put myself in Neji's shoes. You know, like that wasn't my thought experience with Neji. I liked Neji as a character. I liked him because he's kind of a typical shonen protagonist in a lot of ways, and I thought he was very relatable in a lot of ways. So I liked him for that aspect. But like, no, I never like fantasized about like him getting with his students. Like that was not a thought that ever kind of crossed my mind.
Yeah, no,
but
never,
the most
ever.
important thing I want to say about Negima, to me personally, is that Negima has what for me in like my pre-transition life, like big egg phase life, one of the most important anime characters of that period. Like a character that I was obsessed with. And that is the character of Chisame. Do you remember Chisame?
From Negima, the names.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for Negima, a lot of the names elude me. You have to describe the character.
Pull up a picture of Chisame for chat.
Of course.
You'll know exactly who this is.
Yeah. I recognize this character.
You'll know exactly who
one.
this is. Pull up a picture of Chisame. Yeah. Okay. So I love her. Even today, even knowing how problematic with a capital P Negima is, I cannot stop loving this character. And the reason why is because I related to her so much as a kid. Like our first like big introduction to this character is she's like complaining about like how weird and bizarre all of her classmates are and how she kind of hates everyone because this is like a magic show, you know, like there's people with like weird powers and things like that. And Negima, and everyone's kind of bizarre. She's like, this is so weird, I hate this. And she's like the only one that's like, why is our teacher a 10-year-old? This is weird, I don't like any of this. And she does all of this and kind of she has like this panic attack, and she goes back to her room, and we find out that she's like a secret like e-girl model.
Yeah,
in her spare time.
I feel like that would have aged really well, though. Like, I feel that angle of it, if you did it today, she would have been like a VTuber.
Oh, yeah, this is like before Twitch and stuff. This is like kind of ahead of its time.
Yeah.
A little bit. But she's like doing like idol stuff. And here's my point of this is I remember like thinking in my head, like, oh my God, this girl who like expresses all of this like outward hate and all of this like kind of stuff, but like secretly, you know, gets like to be herself in private. You know, like as a closeted trans woman, that really appealed to me. That idea of this character, you know, who like was like so outwardly like, oh, I'll never do this. But inside, she really wanted to be like everyone else. Like she wanted to be like allowed to be herself, like every one of her classmates was. And I just loved her as a character, and I love that she got a lot of development and page time as the manga went on. And spoiler, according to that sequel manga, Neji does get with her. They get married, according to that sequel comic,
which is bizarre to me, but
which, well, to me as like the ultimate fan of Chisame, I'm like, yeah, girl, make it happen.
Make it so.
I mean, she was also, I think, the only person that really like treated Neji as a kid and like kind of understood like who he was. I think is maybe another angle of that. But like, yeah, that character was so important to me. Like everything about her was so important to me that after I transitioned and came out, the first time I ever cosplayed ever in my entire life was at Comic-Con, and I cosplayed as her. Comic-Con. Nobody knew who I was because this is 2021, 2022.
That character would be a little...
Nobody knew who I was, but I did dress up as this character. And like, that was like a dream of mine because I just had such a connection to this one person, this one character.
Yeah, it's a big deal, especially if you have a character you connect to that deeply. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, and again, like I think there is like a little bit of like that closeted the transness to it. Like I did kind of really relate to her story. Like I really felt like I had this connection with her and like her personality and like how she was. Like she was kind of like, because I was kind of doing the same stuff. Maybe I wasn't as conscious of it at the time, but I was also like kind of angry and I didn't really know why and like all these other little things. And
Yeah, no,
yeah,
100%. I get that.
that's my story.
And I'm so glad you able to connect to a character like that too. Like that's so important to be able to intimately connect and relate to a character. That's so vital. I personally cannot say that any character in Negima or Love Hina I connected to that deeply, but for me that was Evangelion.
Totally fair.
For me,
Yeah.
Evangelion was a series where I connected with every character. Like I was like, oh, that's me for real, for real. minus
Aw.
the Misato kissing Shinji part. That was a little weird, but everything else. I have to make the disclaimer because on it's a whole discussion for another day. But no, I think the thing personally for me, Negima is odd for me because with Negima, I thought of it as, and I feel like discussing this in terms of back when I was like, what, like this, when I read this, 13, 14, I was just getting off of, when was I 13, 14? I think Harry Potter was just wrapping up. So,
mentally, while you're telling the story, if you could pull up a picture of Chisame and her like e-girl
okay.
model appearance, just so people can kind of understand what I'm talking about. That's how she looks like.
Okay, I guess you'd say
that's kind of a showing of it.
Yeah.
But she has like a very specific kind of a look where she lets her hair down. She has like all of this very cute kind of stuff. Oh yeah, she does get turned into a kid appearance. Again, this manga is not good. You shouldn't read it. But
it's a weird manga. No, but
weird manga. But anyway.
But anyway, so one thing I would say, with my experience with Negima, I'm gonna click out of this real quick. Oh, here's a. Just gonna go back to. I'm gonna pull this aside for a second. I'm gonna get another image up here. But no, but that being said, with Negima, with Love Hina, there is the aspect of wish fulfillment there. Negima I find interesting because, again, when I was that old, I was in the middle of finishing up Harry Potter when I was a kid. Now, of course, obviously, my opinion, that's a whole other discussion. I'm not gonna get Harry Potter.
Oh, why? What's wrong with it?
Oh, it's a few factors have gotten in the way of
oh, really? Wow. Yeah.
A couple.
No idea.
No idea what it is. But when you're a teenager and you're getting off of that big series, you're like, oh, I want to read something else that has magic and witchcraft. And Little Witch Academia, which is far superior to Harry Potter, was a few years off. And I hadn't read Earthsea yet, which I think does everything Harry Potter does much better. Again, a little bit of a hint to anyone who's not read Earthsea yet. Read Earthsea; it's fantastic. So that I was really looking for something that scratched that itch, and Negima was that thing. Until the odd elements started to trickle in, and that's I think what was my big thing with Love Hina as well. Like you said, Neji being like a child teacher is already a little weird. It feels like the whole thing from Kiki's Delivery Service where they send the witch out to the village to train, except
it's like Ash going on an adventure at 10. Like
that's true, but like I think in both,
like the anime equivalent, they love to send their kids out to die.
Yeah, especially the difficult challenges of being a teacher. That alone is
well, Hogwarts. The kids are dying like all the time.
They really shouldn't have.
Don't take kids to Hogwarts.
That school should have been closed. Fucking
everyone involved in Hogwarts should be in prison.
Yeah,
or executed.
That's one of the worst.
Put them all in Alcatraz or Alcaban, wherever it's
one
called.
Of them. Whatever.
Azkaban.
But no, like with Negima, the oddness leaps out at you. With Love Hina, because of the contemporary setting of the story, the fantastical elements don't seem to hit you as hard, especially when it comes to stuff like Qualasu. Qualasu, I think the character's name is. Right, that's the girl's name. Who I think it's Qualasu.
Is she the kind of enemy of the show?
No, not quite. She's no, this girl.
Hold on.
I guess kinda. I guess she kinda counts as like
Not like the blonde haired girl, right?
Yeah. She apparently has a page on the Wikipedia
Oh no,
on the villain
I thought
wiki.
we were still talking about. I thought we were still talking about Nejima.
No, I meant Love Hina.
I never remember Love
I
Hina.
was
Yeah,
comparing Love
Koala
Hina.
Sue is a
She's a
yeah. I get.
there's a lot.
She's interesting. She's a lot.
There's a lot
She
to discuss.
she has they do the crap where she has like an adult form sometimes, which I
That's
hate.
weird.
I hate when anime does this.
Well, actually, let me phrase that. What do you hate? The fact that she has a child form or an adult form?
Well, she's a child. She's a child, though. She says a child, but under like certain
How old is
conditions,
she?
she's like an adult. I mean, she's like the youngest character before the American girl gets introduced. Later
She's
on
younger
in
than Shinobu?
either younger or the same age.
Yeah, I know she's younger in.
Because Koala Sue's supposed to be like a genius or something like that.
Oh, that's right. She's the Chio-chan of the series.
Yeah. Yeah,
I love that's my point of reference, Chio-chan from
she's like the
Dio.
Ed of the series, where she can just kind of do all these things, and she's also turns out to be like the princess of like a foreign land, or this is typical harem stuff.
It feels a little racist, though, doesn't it?
It's extremely racist. Yeah,
a bit. Yeah,
extremely racist. Extremely.
Yeah.
Japan and anime can be extremely racist in very specific ways that sometimes go over Western audiences' heads because they're just kind of like.
I do want to hold back on condemning Japan and the racism a little too much because there is a lot of positive representation in Japanese media as well. It just is also bad representation.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting because like Japan will have like an anime and they'll have like a Chinese character that is like our racial stereotype of a Chinese character.
I would say in some cases certainly. But there's also
and that's like it's more of like to show like Japan and China who have always like hated each other, kind of thing. It's more of like a cultural traditional thing that's gone for like thousands of years.
That's true. I would personally hesitate using a generalization on that, but yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah. None of that. Every single person in Japan is racist, is what I'm trying to say. You can clip that out, take that, put that into
context,
whatever you're saying. Yeah.
No. That's not going to be a controversial statement at all. That's not going to cause controversy at all. No, but like I think it depends on a case by case basis. But I do feel like Love Hina is not exactly the anime you should go to for positive racial representation of any kind, or an accurate representation of any human being, really. And I do think that, as a teenage boy, you go in because it's popular with a lot of guys who really, 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 really want a girlfriend. And as you said before, your personal experience as well, you have all these different demographics who come to it. It created like a perfect storm for Love Hina, where it was the right series at the right time for the Western market. Also,
yeah, and like I loved all of the characters in Love Hina. I mean, I even liked Kitaro. Like I also, it's interesting. Like a lot of harem manga with like characters like Kitaro, which were kind of like these kind of blank face, like like audience insert characters almost. Like, I honestly like I always loved them because like that's how I felt. Being like closeted trans, like just everything was just kind of happening around me. I was just like this dorky guy. I'm pretty sure I had the same haircut as Kitaro at some point in my life and wore the same clothes as he did. It's just like kind of like, oh, everything sucks and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, that's how I felt, which is part of my fan theory that everyone that starred in a harem anime is now just trans. And
that's not true for School Days.
That's not true. Well, we don't know what in the afterlife he might have figured some things out about.
I think wherever that poor boy went, I don't think he's having the option to. I don't think he has the option to make many decisions like that. And I think it's interesting is too, again, because I discovered Love Hina around the time I watched Ayoriaushi. It's night and day. The concepts are very similar, but the execution is night and day.
Yeah.
especially as an adult looking back on the two. Because when you're a teenager going back, you see the same. When you're a repressed teenager, you see the same things. You see
Mm-hmm.
the fan service. You see the bunch of girls fawning off after one guy. What girl? If I was in a situation, what I'd choose, etc. Um, but again, when you go back as an adult, your perspective is much different, and I think there's a maturity to Ai Yoriaushi that, by contrast with Love Hina, you really get to see the full strength of.
Yeah.
Um, so
For sure.
with Love Hina, just I'm not sure how familiar you are with Ai Yoriaushi. I mentioned you read the manga, but I'll give a
A
brief.
little bit. I didn't read the whole thing, but I remember reading a little bit of it.
Okay,
Uh,
so I'll just recap a
yeah.
little bit so I can get you on the same page with what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Essentially, in Ayori Aoshi, the main character, he is the son of this Japanese business conglomerate, and he's set to wed the daughter of another business conglomerate, family. He runs away because his family's abusive. So right there, you have a very different perspective. Keitaro enters into the Hina house because he's trying to get into Tokyo University. It's very much like an everyman problem. You have an ambition, you have a goal, and you're not skilled enough. You don't have the talent, you don't have the brains to get in, but you're gonna try your hardest to persevere anyway. It's a very earnest story. It's something everyone can relate to. The feelings of
Mm-hmm.
I'm not good enough for this, but I'm still gonna try my best anyway. Here we have a very different type of character who's given up a life of privilege because the pain is not worth it. And that is, as an adult, honestly, in some ways, so much more intimately you can connect to that more.
Right.
It's painful and it sucks, but it's effective. And the love,
It's
therefore.
yeah.
And the other thing
No,
is,
keep going.
in Love Hina, there's this will they, won't they. You don't know who's the childhood friend, but you kind of know who the childhood friend is from the beginning, but you don't know for sure, but you can figure it out pretty easily. And the drama is who will Keitaro end up with. Kaoru, though, in Ayoriaushi, from the beginning, he's going to end up with the Aoi. There's no question. That's the one true pairing of the series. That's the end game, and you know that from day one. And the tension isn't will he end up with someone else. The tension comes from will some outside force come in to separate these two, because they have to be together secretly, because the situation through which Kaoru left, he cannot marry her without there being a massive public catastrophe, like a massive scandal, because that's how this would work. And so they have to kind of secretly date, which already is a concept I love, where they're secretly dating, and because of that, no one thinks that there's a thing going on here. So they think, oh, he's fair game. He's a single guy. We're gonna just try and go out with him, and they're justified in that because they have no way of knowing anything else is going on. So no character is seen as cheating because the two central characters, they want to be together, and these outside forces, they're trying to interfere in a way that doesn't necessarily make them seem like bad people as a result of that. And that's really interesting to me, I think. That's really cool, I think. Because it really allows the characters to be mature and adult while also fulfilling the tropes and cliches of the harem genre. Whereas with Love Hina, I feel like those tropes, as you get older, you kind of look at those and go, well, that's not realistic. And it's silly to say that, yes, it's not realistic, but the series where a person gets rocket punched into the sky, but I digress. I think that's an interesting perspective. It's just a thought I have when I revisit this, comparing it to other harem stories.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's interesting. Honestly, I think for the exact reasons you said you liked AI Yoriaushi is probably why I stopped reading. Because like you said, who he's getting with.
Mm-hmm.
So after that point, it was like, okay, I'm just watching a bunch of manga where like they're not just finally getting together.
Mm-hmm.
To me that felt like agonizing because like that's part of the reason why I like to watch these things, like or even like in shoujo where like who's gonna get with. There's only two people. There's this guy and this girl. They're gonna get together. But like watching how that happens is why I like to watch it. And I also really, really like, which doesn't happen as often, is when the main characters get together and you get to see them like be a couple
Yes.
for a bit, which is I really wish that more anime did that. One thing I want to bring up about Love Hina, which was at the time actually kind of subversive,
Mm.
was that like when Kitaro first goes to the bathhouse or whatever, like all the girls hate him. Like they don't like fully fall in love with him. Like he has to kind of like meet these characters and talk to them. I think only Shinobu's the only one that's a crush on him, but like Naru hates him. Um the samurai girl was Makoto?
Makoto, yeah.
Makoto.
Makoto? I'm saying I think I'm saying Motoko because I'm thinking of Ghost in the Shell. So it might
is it Motoko? I'm trying to remember.
Let me double check. I'm gonna cheat. We have a thing called Google. I'm gonna cheat and find out.
I haven't thought about this show in so long, so if I'm right, that's a
very. I just have Makoto from Danganronpa there.
I think Makoto is maybe me butchering a Sailor Moon name.
Oh yeah, Mako-chan. Motoko. Yeah. It is Motoko. I was right. Motoko Aoyama.
Motoko. That's right. Motoko. Also hates him, and a bunch of characters are just kind of neutral. Like Kitsune is her name. The fox. The older woman.
Her name is Kitsune. Kitsune.
It's like Kitsune. I think is her name.
Oh my goodness! I forgot that detail.
It's great. But like, yeah, she's kind of neutral. She doesn't really care.
Mitsune.
Mitsune.
There we go.
Close.
Still close to Kitsune. Too close to Kitsune.
Same idea, but like, again, like most characters either just like hate him or just like don't really care either way. Mm-hmm. And at the time, that was actually considered kind of interesting because most harem anime are like the girls love the guy like instantly. Like that's
I
like
agree with that. I think I don't know if I agree with that part because I'm thinking like back to like the ones like the Rumiko Takahashi manga, like Ranma One Half, like Urusei Yatsura, where there is. Well, actually, Urusei Yatsura is a little weird because it's like because at first she doesn't like him, but then once the manga continues, that the thing with Lum changes, but.
Or like something like Tenchi Muyo, where like everybody likes Tenchi, you know, like that, which is kind of like that was like the harem to end all harems, you know, like that was the one that everyone was kind of watching.
That's
in
true.
Something like that, everyone is fighting over Kitaro, but that doesn't really happen in Love Hina. In Love Hina, everybody basically hates him, and he has to kind of win them over, which you can argue there is its own kind of problematic thing, and how he goes about it. But like it is interesting that like he is not like welcome. Like it takes a long time for Naru to like even like him as a person. And like he gets her to like him by like you said, putting in that hard work. You know, they study all the time together. That was another thing that I love when like they show that like Naru, when she takes like the practice exams, is like dressed completely differently. Like she has like this total nerd outfit. I love people that are like.
That makes me think of His and Her Circumstance a lot. You ever see that series?
I haven't seen that one.
Oh no.
Oh wait. His or
Kari Kano.
No, I haven't seen that one.
I've
heard of it.
Yeah. So you know, you have the main character. And the whole gag is that she's.
Oh yeah, they have a posting. Like yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I'm familiar with the concept.
Oh, it's delightful. Like, Kari Kano is such a beautiful. Like her entire motivation is to be pampered. That's her whole goal. She wants to live a comfortable life.
Her. You know, same girl. I feel it.
But she's like. I'm sorry, I cut you off there. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying that's extremely relatable to me. But like,
right here we go. This is her on a normal basis. Just this kind of like.
Oh yeah, I love everything about her. That is amazing.
Yeah, it's a good series, and of course, as Chad is pointing out, the director was Hideaki Anno, who I forget if this was like right before or right after, directed Evangelion. Any conversation I have with any human being will at some point lead to Evangelion. in some
I
capacity.
saw I saw Evangelion. I saw Evangelion as an adult. I want to say it was like a year or two before I actually transitioned.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, like before I saw that, I would say without question that Paranoia Agent's the best anime ever made. I still think I say that, but I do think Evangelion is extremely close, if not tied with it. I do think it's an amazing show, and Shinji's obviously trans. Like, how else do you read? How else do you read that? Like,
I mean, I mean, as a bisexual, certainly is another option. But like,
bisexual, he can be that too. He's bisexual and also trans. I have no other way to understand that character.
He's Shinji's interesting. I love Evangelion, so I'm biased. I could talk about that for hours and hours and hours.
Oh, I even love all the weird ending stuff. Like I think that's fascinating.
Oh,
like,
I love those details. I love the ending of end of Evangelion. I know a lot of people.
Or even like the original ending. I like when they ran out of budget and it gets so. I think it's so cool. I love like stuff like that. I think stuff like that is so. I'm a big art house freak.
Yeah.
I swear. I do like just weird stuff. In card, especially like something mainstream, like Evangelion was, and
so chat is pointing out that Shinji's current voice actor is non-binary, so we got that.
In the English VA or the Japanese VA?
Well, kind of both actually. Now I think about it, because Megumi Ogata is has said she is that they don't. I think she still goes by she/her pronouns, but she doesn't really. She feels she fits into one gender entirely.
That's interesting.
But I was actually talking about Casey Mongillo.
So the one from the Netflix dub.
Yeah, Casey Mongillo. I feel like I'm mangling their name.
The Netflix dub was my first introduction to the show, so really? I can't tell. Well, again, like I watched this thing like way later.
That's true.
And when it came on Netflix, I was like, okay, here's a good chance to like actually watch this thing that everybody tells me is amazing. I know there's all these people that are like, oh, that dub is so terrible. I'm like, I don't know. I didn't see the first dub, so I can't. I don't know. I loved it. I thought it was great. So
I think some of the voice actors, Casey Mongillo specifically, they're good as Shinji. I think they're fantastic as Shinji. But there's some things I just love from the ADV dub. I did a whole video about the ADV dub of Evangelion just because.
I did watch the original parts of the original dub like later on. I'm like, why are people defending this? This is terrible.
It grows on you. The voices grow on you. You gotta get past the first couple of episodes.
That's nostalgia talking.
Nah,
you were a child when you watched it, and that's why it's like Love Hina. I was a child when I read Love Hina. That's the real reason I still
I genuinely don't think it's nostalgia. There is I've rewatched it since then. There are things that they do that are very clever.
I don't know.
I think once you get to Asuka's first appearance, the dub actors really hit their stride. Before that, there is some clunkiness, there is some awkwardness. There's episodes 1 and 2 especially. There's some of the voice acting is very like high school theater production, but then when it gets into like, but as it goes on, they really hit their stride. When you get to the end of Evangelion, like they are in tune with their characters, and you do a side by side, especially. And I'm biased because, and I'll say this a billion times in the future. I think Tiffany Grant as Asuka is really solid. Like that performance is really good. But again, I digress. That's a whole other.
There's something. Yeah, I had no idea what Evangelion was because the fan base was very confusing to me. This is something I noticed. When I watch like anime, is that fan bases I assume are just watching a different show like all the time. Like when I'm entering to watch something, I'm like, okay, people talk about it. I know all of the fan talk and memes about Evangelion, so I'm gonna watch it, and then I watch it. I'm like, this freaking white-haired boy is only in one episode. Why are you?
Because he's so good.
I guess he's really good in that one episode, but I was expecting him to be like a main character with like how much people were like talking about him.
Well, that's because
what's his name again? Katsu or something.
Karu Nagisa.
Karu Nagisa. Like, yeah, like I just assumed like this character was like the main, and I assumed this he was not only the main character, but this was just like a yaoi story between him and Shinji, based
Mm.
on like what the fan base was like. And that was very shocking when I found out he's only in one episode. And like you said, yeah, he's very like, oh my god, that's an amazing episode. Like I
Yeah,
totally agree with you
his
on all
episode packs
that.
a punch.
It's just very like, oh my, it reminds me of like when I first heard about Ouran High School Host Club, which is now one of my favorite anime ever. I mean, speaking of like good harem
Mm-hmm.
anime, I remember when I first heard about the show, I was introduced by this woman at a convention. Came up to me or something. We're talking about something. She's like, "Oh my god! Like, have you watched Ouran High School Host Club? Like, there are these two twins and they're twincest. You should watch it right now." And I'm like, I don't want to watch that. No, I don't want to watch the twincest show. What are you talking about? And then like I actually go out and watch Ouran, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know there was a girl in this show. Until
You
like I
see, you want
watched
to talk
it.
about a character who I think is non-binary.
Oh my god, yeah, not also probably Ace, honestly.
Yeah, no,
Like yeah, oh my god, yeah, we love her. She is perfect.
yeah, just a
Um,
fantastic. Oron is great. That's one I
yeah,
wish I could revisit for the first time.
yeah,
Honestly, because it's such a beauty, it's such a charming perfection. And again, we want to talk about heightened reality, and I feel like it's interesting how Oron aged so well, but
oh yeah,
Love Hina did not, in my opinion, because and I think they're very similar. You know, they're both about people who are forced into like these societies essentially, based on circumstances outside their control, usually financial. You're surrounded by people who are all in love with them, in some capacity. There is some abuse in some fashion. I'd say that the Oron Host Club, they're more they use their status as leverage over her quite frequently. Um, but like I think the comedy is so effective in Oron, and I feel like a lot of the comedy in Love Hina didn't doesn't land it the same way when you get older because it's centered on specific gags over and over again. It's very repetitive and cyclical, whereas cyclical, I should say. Whereas Oran Host Club, it reinvents itself with every single gag. Every single instance of humor is a reinvention upon itself in a way that's
yeah.
really
I would say
compelling.
that's the one thing like looking back at Love Hina that even at the time was kind of bothered by is that there was just so much like I guess filler for lack of a better word. Like they would like draw out a lot of things like, oh, now they're on this island or now this thing's happening. Just to like which to me felt like they were just trying to fill up pages
Mm.
and make this will they won't they last as long as possible.
It did not need to be
Um
14 volumes.
no, there did not need to be 14 volumes, but also I would also say that the anime was way too short to explain this whole journey because a lot of the emotional depth I think that's in the manga is very much lost in the anime. And Negima never had a good anime adaptation, so there's not even
They tried
anything to talk.
twice,
They're
failed both
all
times.
yeah, they're all bad. Just they're all terrible. It's just that's not adaptable, I guess.
Mm. And I
But
think
like,
I do think we should mention also the current status of Ken Akamatsu. I feel like that does color a
oh, I
lot
have
of
no
my.
idea what's going on. I have no
Oh,
idea
you don't
what's
know?
going on. I don't know anything.
He's a politician now.
I did hear that. That sounds
Yeah,
familiar. That sounds
he's
familiar. So what are his horrible politics? Please let me know.
he is he okay. So he's with the LDP, which is the majority party of Japan. I'm not going to represent say the LDP has the Liberal Democratic Party, which sounds like it'd be a leftist organization, right? Based on that name. Well, it's not. It's more. It's kind of like the American equivalent of the Republican Party. It runs the gamut from mildly conservative to like extremely conservative. Like it's
Yeah, that's generally what those things mean outside of America,
yeah,
outside of the
yeah,
United States. That's yeah, we're the only weird country. But yeah, that checks
yeah.
for
And
sure.
his whole thing, his big policy is protecting opposing censorship laws, which you know, on paper sound great. Anyone who opposes censorship, I am a-okay. They're a-okay in my book, as long as you're not, actively creating situations that harms people.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he has this whole big component where I'm going to super oversimplify that. I do go into more detail about it in one of my earlier videos about Japan and conservative thought. So if you want me to see me phrase it in a way that's more articulate, that's the place to do it. But the gist of it is that he opposes censorship, and he opposes outside influences on art, which is a term so vague that it can be applied to anything that he interprets as affecting the artist's ability to create art, including common decency in some cases, or Western influence, as he's, whatever it might be. He's recontextualized it depending on what topic of discussion is going on at the time.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like the American free speech argument, with all of its problems. I mean,
I don't know about that. I think.
Well, but here's what I mean, because like a lot of the free speech arguments that happen in the United States, are the ones kind of made by conservatives, in that like everything should be okay, everything should be allowed. Obviously, they're all very hypocritical, because conservatives also want to ban a lot of things. But there's this running notion that like the worst thing that you can do in this country, and this is kind of a bipartisan thing too, is like not to like ruin people's rights or things like that. Like, it's okay to be racist and transphobic for some reason, but the minute you like try to stop somebody from like saying something, then everyone loses their minds, which is such like a double standard that I really hate about how this country kind of works. And it does sound like it's a little similar over there in Japan from what you're describing.
I don't know. Kind of. It's kind of like that. I wouldn't say it's exactly like that, but I think that's a fair comparison to make.
Okay.
Again, the nuances are very complicated, and I would need to go from a case by case basis, which I just would need to do a little more research to give you the specific examples that I would like to cite. But,
right. I mean, I imagine like it's all like, what, like CP stuff? Like that's
that's a big one. That's a big point of it. Yeah, it's a lot of it is lolly content.
Yeah, the most awful and confusing conversations I've ever had were with CP defenders on the internet.
Yeah,
only people to ever try to dox me too in my entire life. That was extremely funny.
Yeah, it's a conversation that I don't even want to get into, because it's just,
these
self-evident.
These people, like, I basically just said like, hey, don't like don't do CP stuff, and they actually tried to get me fired from my band. I used to be in a rock band. And they like messaged one of the other members, like, did you know that your member's a pedophile or something? And they were like, hey, Madeline, like, what's this? Like, oh, I can't even begin to explain it. And they're like, oh yeah, we don't care. We're just like, we're just very confused. It was extremely funny.
Let me see if I follow this correctly. You said CP's bad, and they tried to silence you by calling you a pedophile. So they know CP's bad.
People in my band who have no idea people in my band who would have no idea. Like, if you try to explain lolly to these people, they would be like, what? They're normies. Like, they would be like, what are you talking about? Like, people, like normal people, that if you try to explain to them, they would be like, no, after one sentence. People on the internet were a little bit more desensitized, so it takes us a little bit longer for us to say, please stop talking. But people outside the internet, you don't even get that. You're just done. You're just,
well, no, because who's going to listen to that
stop.
Conversation? Like, you bring it up in conversation, people, anyone, I mean, myself included, gonna get like, what are you talking about? Please stop. That's the conversation right there. That's the end of it. That's the end of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, and like, but all like the little like weird things they try to say, like, oh, like technically this character is actually this old and they're not really a child, which again is only works if you're terminally online and you're in a bubble chamber. That's the only time these arguments ever work. You say that to like a coworker, they're going to never talk to you again. Like, that's very important to understand about why this whole conversation is so insane. and why. Just don't talk to them.
It's definitely a conversation I don't enjoy having because once it starts that it's only going to go a certain number of ways.
And look, you know what? Hey! Look, take this out of context, please.
It's not like really want us to take this. When you say take this out of context, do you really want us to take this out of context?
Please clip this to use for your podcast, your sound bites, your YouTube poops. If they still have those, you can use that for that. I just spent some time defending Negima. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna show my butt on this. You know what? I get what's going on.
Do we really want?
I get what's.
I don't know about this guy. I don't know how I feel about this.
Look, I'm not. I am nothing but sympathetic. Empathetic, no. Sympathetic, sure. But look. Don't just no. Whatever you're thinking, whatever you're going to say, just no. I'm sorry. This is not a debatable conversation. Just don't. Look. I get it. You really, really liked, I don't know, the Sailor Moon when you were a kid, and now you're weird about it and you're 40. Okay, I get it. But just stop. Just stop. Just stop. Is all I'm saying.
I feel like we're close to making a point with that. I feel like this is...
if you can cut this out and make it sound like I'm actually a secret pedophile, that would be great.
Would it be great? I don't know if that would be great.
I need all the look. Okay, I am losing the trans girl YouTube drama wars because nobody's talking about me, so I need to get my place back in. Okay. I need
feel
people
like
to pay
I'm
attention
a
to me.
vessel now for this drama machine you're trying to pump into.
That's the real reason that's the real reason I came on here.
It's
I cannot let ContraPoints be more talked about than me. I have to make up something so that I am the Twitter person of the day and everyone cancels me. That's why I'm here.
You see, listen. As someone who has been Twitter person of the day, I can tell you the secret of how to do it. It's very simple.
Okay.
All you need to do is post on Twitter and say the Cenobites weren't so bad, and they'll come flocking to you. That's all.
But they weren't so bad. That's the point of the movie,
right? It's in the tagline of the freaking first film.
They have no sense of morality. They have no good or evil because they're the same thing. To them, there is no distinction between pleasure and pain.
Yes,
that's the whole point of Hellraiser.
The tagline of the movie is "Angels to some, demons to some, angels." I will
say the sequels do muddy it because they do try to make them more into villains. But then in that original movie, they are just creatures. They are just basically forces of nature, animals. You could almost say they have no.
Oh, I wouldn't.
They
say
have no opinions.
Nature. I would not say forces of nature or animals. They're neither of that. They're alien. They are so alien.
That's right. What we our sense of right and wrong, pain and pleasure, are so foreign to them because they live in a completely different universe from that. So we can't understand each other. Exactly. That's the whole point. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I feel like we've gone way far off the track of Love Hina.
was there any Cenobites in Love Hina?
I wish. It would have made the show a lot better. It would have made the manga a lot better.
There was the flying turtle.
There is definitely the pursuit of pain. That's for certain.
Kitaro loves the pain. You know what?
True.
That's he does. You know what? It's canon. He does say he likes it when he gets beat up. So.
Well, we've certainly reached
don't kink shame Kitaro.
We've reached a weird level in this conversation. I think I'm gonna start wrapping things up.
Start wrapping. I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
I ended.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of if I have any closing thoughts on. Don't read I Love You. That one's kind of boring.
Yeah, that was actually surprising. I almost forgot that existed actually until
I read it.
Researching.
Well, they re-released it in the they released it in the U.S. as a command. If you like Love Hina, check out his first book. And you could tell he doesn't have it figured out yet. It's kind of boring.
Well,
Um,
it's not like,
but
yeah. There's some people who hit it out of the park right when they hit the scene. Him not
no,
so much.
he no, Love Hina definitely feels like a fulfillment of what he was trying to do in Hey, I Love You. I don't know. I'm curious to read it again
Mm.
now that I'm older, and so I can be like, oh my god, what was I thinking reading this? But I also, I guess I want to say that we all kind of have our own kind of interpretations and our own like ways of experiencing art and being emotionally connected with art. And I think it's important to have that along with the understanding that art is problematic.
Mm.
Art can be made by terrible people and could also, whether consciously or not, express bad ideas. I think as audience members, we need to be able to kind of make peace with that balance in our minds. Like I am a big fan of Lovecraft, but Lovecraft was the worst human being on the planet. Like just an awful person, and there's a lot
Yeah.
of really bad things in a lot of his stories. Um, but I still love the stories. Like it's
Mhm.
okay to have that dichotomy in your mind. So something like Love Hina, like I absolutely understand why it now has the reputation it does. But also you know, have that nostalgic feelings for it. And like I said, I did have a little bit of a trans egg cracking processing through Love Hina and Nejima. Like I was looking at a lot of the comments on the Twitter thread when you announced that we were gonna do this stream,
Mhm.
and a lot of people just like, oh, Love Hina is like the worst thing ever. Anybody that likes Love Hina is so weird. I never liked Love Hina, and I kind of felt like myself getting like down again, like kind of like how I felt at the time when I first read Love Hina and being kind of embarrassed that I was reading it, but for different reasons,
Mm.
like
That's
just because
understandable.
the
Yeah.
opinions, yeah, because the opinions were different. And again, it's not saying that anybody's like right or wrong, but like I think sometimes when we do kind of just make this like this thing is either all good or all bad, I think we do like misunderstand a lot of the nuances in art, and I think it ends up making us have very boring conversations about policing whether it's morally right or morally wrong to consume art. Because with few exceptions, like it's generally just like your own choice. If you choose to read this, if you choose to do this, like Harry Potter. Like you can like Harry Potter still, just if you also like J.K. Rowling, that's a problem because J.K.
That's
Rowling
a
is
bit.
bad. But like if you
Yeah.
can
It's a
make
bit
that
rough
work
there.
in your brain, if you can still watch a Woody Allen film, more power to you. I can't ever watch a Woody Allen film again. But like if that's something that you can do, then I also like understand that J.K. Rowling is bad. Like read Harry Potter, but don't also try to like explain away what the bad parts are. Like I think it's so healthy if everyone can just be like, I like this thing in spite of these things that I know are wrong. And this is why I am still choosing to experience this instead of like trying to justify by having this like morality competition that we're really only having with ourselves.
Yeah. No. No. I think my perspective is a little different. I feel like for me, I want to emphasize that certain art is valuable to people at different points in their lives. Right.
Mm-hmm.
The media that we consume when we're younger is relevant for when we are younger. That is the
Mm-hmm.
importance of that art. That it is able to capture a feeling at a moment in an instant, but that feeling in instant may no longer be relevant in 5, 10 years, Or you may be in a different headspace and reassess the art from a different perspective. That's why I always feel like it's valuable to go back to older art that you have loved or hated as you age, because you are able to reassess: is this art objectively bad? Oh, there's no such thing as objectively bad art. Is this art
Well, there's also like there's no such thing as objectively good art.
exactly?
That's
Yeah,
just
but
yeah.
like
There's no yeah.
yeah, 100%. But like, is the art bad, or is it I am not the right person to enjoy this art?
Mm.
And that's the case with Love Hina for me. When I was 14, this was the best. This was fantastic. I loved every second of it because it scratched an itch that needed scratching. It hit a note that I needed to be hit at the right time when I first encountered it. But coming back to it as an adult, everything's you see the cracks in the surface. You see the points where you disagree. You see the elements that you don't engage with anymore. And because of that, you notice what you perceive to be faults in the narrative. And there's a lot of art like that, some more extreme, some less so. I think a lot about how people are arguing superhero fatigue, right? That the
Right.
superhero movies that they're watching nowadays just don't live up to what they were when they were kids. But the reality isn't that the movies are any better or worse. The thing is, you're a different person, and you're looking for different somethings out of your art. The movies haven't changed, you have. And because of that, that's something you gotta assess for yourself. That's something you gotta look at yourself and say, what do I need to have changed? And
Well, yeah, I mean, I would maybe disagree about some of the superhero movies, but that's
oh yeah, I'm talking in
more of
general
a
terms, not specifics.
yeah, well, for me, like I would look at it, from like, because I hate saying this because I don't think this should justify anyone's
Mm-hmm.
opinions, but I was a film major. That's what I graduated with from
Mm-hmm.
college, and like I do love analyzing movies and kind of thinking about movies broadly.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I criticize something, I do generally like to do it from those terms. But yeah, I agree with everything that you're saying. I think we instinctively like want to put a box in things that like mean a lot to us.
Mm-hmm.
We want it to just be like perfect and the same forever, like this sealed, like airlocked compartment that'll just be that thing and it'll always be that thing forever. But that's
Mm-hmm.
not how art works. Like not only do we get older and we change, but society changes.
Oh,
You always
absolutely.
hear people say, you always hear people make the argument of like, oh, they couldn't make Blazing Saddles today. It's like, well, yeah, this is the year 2024. Why would you make a movie like Blazing Saddles, a film about the 60s
Mm.
in the year 2024?
Exactly. And I
You
think
know,
feeding off of that too, the other issue is that the landscape of anime is very different. A show like
mm-hmm,
a manga like Love Hina becomes popular in the West because there's no harem anime in the West at this point. We had Tenchi Muyo. We had
mm-hmm,
Ayuri Aoshi. We had a lot of reverse harem, actually. A lot of reverse harem, now I think about it. Like a lot of Fushigi Yugi, Fruits Basket, etc. Or in Host Club. But, nowadays, we have Rent a Girlfriend season 3. You can get it right now. All seasons of it.
mm-hmm.
We have all the old harem anime. We were overdosed with harem anime in the years following Love Hina. And, I mean, school days. I mean, I always think of the game that 4chan created, Katawa Shoujo, which is legitimately a pretty good narrative, I think, considering it came from 4chan. I think even they're shocked they made
I'm not,
this.
I'm not, I'm not familiar with
It's
that
it's
one.
a date. Okay, so the concept is it's a dating sim, and mind you, this started as a joke on 4chan. And if you know how
Yeah,
4chan
like it's
was,
4chan. Everything starts as a joke.
but this was
Yeah.
like early 2000s, but it became something very sincere as it developed. Like it started as like a gag, as them making fun of harem anime, and basically the concept is they go to a school. The main character goes to a school for people with disabilities, and it's a dating sim, or a dating harem sim with girls with different disabilities. One is blind, one is deaf, one's has her arms amputated, one has her legs amputated, and the other one is horribly burned. Um, and that's the game. And what started as a gag, they would rewrite the script, and they would. At first, it was like basically the Love Hina dating sim on Newgrounds, very raunchy, very gross. But with each rewrite, the game would become more sincere. The character writing became more intentional. They really started to empathize with the characters and their struggles, and not just their struggles, but also their strengths. And what came out of it was actually kind of very remarkable. I think Katawa Shoujo is a fantastic example of art coming from the last place you'd expect it to come from. Um, and the whole game was developed basically by 4chan people, by 4chan anons. Um, and it's an example, I think, But it started as a parody of the harem tropes, and became a pastiche of the harem tropes, then became an improvement of the harem tropes, with each subsequent reevaluation. Because it took like 4 or 5 years for them to make this game, and the people that they were when they first came up with the idea as a gag on 4chan, they were no longer the same person 4 years down the line, 3 years down the line. So that, I think, is a great example of how art can reflect how we change, and how we change based on what we see in our media. Because they were obviously consuming anime and stuff like that. They were obviously consuming different anime. It started as a Love Hina gag, and maybe they watched School Days, maybe they watched something else. And eventually they have a more matured perspective. And I think that really is a reflection, I should say, of the development that we have in the face of these media changing. I think
that's really interesting. I think that's an extremely interesting point. I'm immediately thinking about, like, personally, I finally recently wrote a pilot for a TV show that I've had the idea for since I was like, thank you. I'm trying to figure out more to do with it, but I wrote a pilot for this 30-minute comedy that I've had the idea for in some form or another since high school. And the version that I wrote, as we're talking about Love Hina, the version that I wrote now is so different from that initial thought that I had at like 15 or 16. It's like night and day. Because like obviously a lot of changes. Obviously, I'm a very different person now I was when I was 16, and all that.
I certainly hope so.
It'd be very confusing, I think.
But no, that's the thing right there, isn't it? You're in a different headspace. And granted,
exactly.
I'm not a television person. When it comes to writing, I'm not TV. I'm more like a book, like novel. But like, right. I would look back at old writing I did when I was like 13, 14. There are fan fictions that have thankfully sunk into the bottom of the internet that I've written.
You can still find one of mine. I won't tell you.
Oh, you can find mine too, but like it's just under weird usernames. And like, that was where I experimented with the building blocks of writing. That's where you start with writing fan fiction. You start with whatever works, and fan fiction is a great element to work with too, because you can use that mold. And I think that's one thing also with Love Hina too. A lot of fan fiction had that harem element to it after the fact. I think that was really a good building block for young writers as well, young creatives, to use as a model for their own creative, like a structure, tropes and cliches, yes, but a structure which they can organize their own thoughts creatively.
I think it really kind of was the Sword Art Online of its time, where it was so successful that like everybody wanted to do more harem, much like when Sword Art Online came out, a show that I don't think is particularly good, but beside the point, like that led to the rise of the isekai. I think that's how you say it.
Isekai, yeah. I don't know if I compare Love Hina to Sword Art. I feel like they were very different types of successes. I think Love Hina in Japan, Love Hina I don't think was as profound of a deal as it was in America. I think it was still very popular, obviously, but like I don't think it was like the groundbreaking success that Sword Art was in Japan at the time it came out.
That's kind of like how Gundam Wing was, because I think that was a lot more popular here than it was in Japan as 100%. Well. Yeah,
because Gundam Wing in Japan, they already had Gundam. Gundam Wing is Gundam.
We didn't have Gundam. We had Gundam Wing was like our first kind of experience on stuff like that.
Yeah, for us it was it was revolutionary. For Japan, it was like, oh come on, this is lame. Go back to Char and all those
Gigantor.
Well, not Gigantor, Char and
Gigantor. I mean, for us, like that, we would only know like Gigantor or Astro Boy when it came to like anything
or Transformers
related to big robots. Yeah. We had no idea what Gundam was.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think we're gonna wrap things up right about now.
Yes.
So Madeline, this was fantastic talking to you. I think we had a lot of discussion. Some things I hope will never get clipped out of context, because what are we even doing with that?
I need that. I need that 15 minutes of fame. Chat.
Maybe you do, but I don't need it. I don't need more of it.
Don't tell them where you got this from. Just say you got it from, I don't know. This is say it was an outtake from a James Somerton stream. That's where you got these quotes from. And
you really want to be linked to James Somerton now? I don't know how I feel about this.
These are jokes, people. Anyway, these are jokes. Anyway, I swear to God. Okay,
if you like their jokes, where can they find you if they like your jokes?
Okay, well, don't find me at these places. These aren't really funny places. But like, check out my YouTube channel, Madeline May. It's just my name, Madeline Maye May. I also do video essays like Ant does. I've got one up there on Hell of a Boss, and I've got one on there on Beau is Afraid, and I should have one on Fantastic Beasts. Speaking of Harry Potter, out in the next week or so. I'm going to talk about why it's even worse than you think it is, and kind of the interesting little directions it goes because of how bad it is. So yeah, look out for that.
That sounds pretty cool, actually. Not gonna lie, I might take a look at that. If you're something like, and your name should be linked, your account should be linked in the description of this stream right now. I think I already did before, but I'll double check. Sometimes it's weird. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. For this conversation, join us at the end of the week. I have a video coming out and possibly another stream, depending if the stars align, on Thursday as well, where we might talk about my favorite anime, assuming that Crystal is able to, if we're able to schedule it. But listen,
is the Crystal I know?
Yes,
I love her. No, she's great.
Oh, she's fantastic. Yeah, we've been trying to do this.
Wait, what's your favorite anime? Is that a secret?
I think I already told you in this stream.
Is it Evangelion?
It's Evangelion, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
So,
great show.
All right, everyone, have a good one.
Bye.
Bye. All right, go to the end screen. I gotta turn off this thing. Oh, that's right. They can hear me talk when I'm doing this. I always love that little detail. Anyway, I'm actually gonna click it off now.